A round of applause for you. Yes, a round of applause for you. I want to give you a round of applause because we are in the third class on this particular journey on the basics and the fundamental aspects of cryptocurrency. It is not easy to start something and stay true to that course. And that's why I'm asking you to give yourself a round of applause. You should appreciate yourself now. Talking about appreciation, a very good way you can get to appreciating is to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out when I post the next series. So now, I'm going to be talking about crypto mining and how cryptocurrency is being mined. Before we get into it, have you ever thought to wonder, like, how is cryptocurrency being produced? We know that in our basic financial system, in our traditional financial system, it is the central bank that is responsible for printing currencies for each country. That, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not so much comfortable with it at far, because I was somewhere somewhere printing money where I have to work myself out to get that money. And there are secrets that you need to understand. In fact, these are even possibly a way for you to earn money if you can, or if you feel like you have the criteria to earn it. And I will not want you to skip any part of it because this is the very most important part. But before we begin, I want us to just go back in time, like rewind a little bit, right? So let's have a little time for a story. And what's the story about? This story is going to be about the evolution of money, how we got to this particular currency we are spending. Because to know where you're going, you have to understand where you're coming from, right? So how do we get to start spending money? From the history we started exchange by trade by barter to, from trade by barter to we started having metallic coins, from metallic coins, and we started having paper currency, and now we have cryptocurrencies, right? So, but there's a backstory to all of these things, right? Because you need to understand something at first, that currency is worthless without value. Currency is an actual representation of the value placed on a particular item, not even a commodity. Now, let me give you a little story. What brought about money, and even we saying that a currency is well above or okay than another currency. In the primitive days, human beings back then exchanged value. There was no currency. There was no form of legal tender. So that was why we have the trade by barter system. For an example, you are a farmer, I am a fisherman. All I do is get fish from the river. All you do is plant. I can't eat my fish alone, and you can't eat all your crops alone. So we have to exchange, right? So, but there's something to it. There's a twist to it. For an example, during the rainy season, there will be enough fish for everyone. Like even all fishermen will be able to get fish from the water. So there will be surplus of fish as well. Enough, or sometimes not enough crops to go around. When it gets to the dry season, the value of fish will increase because then there will be limit in the supply of fish to the whole community. And by then, the price of fish, then let me use the word price, the value of fish is going to increase. Now it's going to be almost considered a luxury. But this is the twist to it. What then would fishermen be relying on when there is enough fish going out in the system or in the community? That is where, and one of the reasons why the trade by barter system wasn't very sufficient, because it wasn't really working. It wasn't really working. If you're a carpenter, or let me say, you are a carpenter and I am a farmer, I will have my service being mostly needed as a farmer than you as a carpenter. Most times you get your job done as a carpenter is during the rainy season. During the dry season when there's no rain, people can still even manage their leaky roof. Talking about the primitive days back then, right? And the development of human knowledge, the discovery of precious stones came in, and everybody wanted these stones because they had value. And back then, one of the things countries, nations, or kingdom of back then fought each other for is just based on basic amenities like water, wood roads. I'm not talking about the kind of roads you know now. Water, good farmlands, good road connection, and later precious stones or deposits of mineral resources. Now, it continued from the fact that, if we have to just paint this picture, it must be someone that will first discover all of these precious stones in a particular area, right? then everybody could actually get the access to go and get these precious stones. But later we started having a system of governance. And then it was brought to, according to history I read, we need to understand that due to the idea of shared wealth, there has to be some kind of license for people who can actually go to get these precious stones out, because fact that this precious stones is in our community and you can go and mine it and I can't mine it, does that mean that you have all the wealth for yourself? While we that aren't mining or are not miners will be poor. So the monarchy system, the government system of back then, the system of government back then said, all right, you know what? All this kind of precious stones, we are going to confiscate them. We're going to give license to people that can get them out, and the wealth of these stones will actually be shared for everybody. You understand? But how can I get to achieve that? You have to have a central system of finance. Now, let me paint a picture for you. If, let's assume Ghana, like Ghana has a large deposit of gold, right? Ghana was that country back then where gold was actually discovered. And let's say South Africa is the country you are. You want to go to Ghana because you want to have a share of the prosperity of gold around them. And a country having a large deposit of gold means that country is rich. They'll be able to trade with other countries for things they don't have, right? But if it is the leaders or the rulers of the land that are trading, how does this kind of thing get to the whole people? So that was where we started having a central exchange, a legal tender. Now, not everybody can go around, carrying goods to exchange. So now they said, all right, let's have a currency. So they started having currency in metal. Metal was iron ore is one of the most available resources back then. So, but currencies that will actually be brought out of metal, iron ore, and will have some deposits of gold. So back then, apparently, one of the reasons why each country's currency was rated above the other is based on their deposits of gold or precious metals. And how does that relate to their currency? Because if, for an example, you have a large deposit of gold in your country, you can put a large deposit of that same gold into your country's coin, right? And that is why you believe or you agree with me that even till date, the coins of back then are worth more than the coins of today because they actually have a real deposit of real gold. So, in fact, if you have some old currencies, you can bring them to me. I'll buy. You have some old coin, like coin of the King James era, man, those are worth millions right now. So to create a system of shared wealth and a central wealth system or a central financial system, the government started telling people, you know what, they are going to be spending this currency, and this is our general currency. And the worth of each country was based on the deposit of their gold back then. That is why even till date, you confirm that a country's national reserve is backed by gold. Is based on the amount of gold it has in its reserve. When they talk about your country's national reserve, they're not talking about the money. They're not talking about oil. They're talking about your gold. And that is why you see that to date, gold is a very essential commodity in the world's economy. You can search that anywhere. Now, continuing. I agree with me that it will get to a stage that the deposits of gold in these countries are going to be reducing per time, right? Now, this is where the problem started coming in. The government couldn't have enough gold in their house. If you are a Bible scholar, if you are maybe a Muslim, you read your Quran very well or your history very well, you won't notice and confirm with me that back then when they talk about a country going to war against another country, what's the country that actually gets victorious in this war go for? Is the gold. They go to the king's palace and pack all their golds because golds are stored in the king's palace. That is where the reserve is. Now, the gold, the amount of gold in all of these countries, can't just continue to go on and on and on forever. So the system of government back then thought about something. What can we do to circulate this thing? One, two, what can we do to reduce the weight of carrying money? You agree that coins can be very heavy, especially when it is carrying gold, right? So they said, all right, now let me see and let me tell you where this government started robbing off its people. I started creating value where currency is now something based on value, not its actual value. So now the government said, all right, let's start printing a particular currency in terms of paper. We will put the logo of our country, put the picture of our queen on our roller to show that it is paramount and it is let me use the word legitimate. And they asked the people back then to bring their gold for this paper, because those papers are going to be the actual legal tender henceforth. Now, the amount of gold you bring is going to determine the amount of this money they will give you. So little by little, the government started buying gold from its people, keeping it with them, and giving the people paper to spend. And that is where the word reserve came from. And that is where we started spending paper currency. Until date, we've been working for a paper issued out by people. Now, I to some extent usually think of it in this way, that the world has gone beyond gold. Now we have titanium, we have lithium, we have oil, and the likes and the likes. How can we get to ensure that this is a shared prosperity? And that is what cryptocurrency is all about. Cryptocurrency is not about or concerned about your country's natural resources. Cryptocurrency is concerned about community power, where which every wealth in a system is shared for everybody and cannot be controlled by somebody. Because looking at it, since then that the government has been issuing out paper to be able to bring in their precious stones. Since then, they've been controlling the finance of people. They've been controlling how people can even get to spend or not spend their money. And that, to some extent, or to a very large extent, is not something okay, because it is rigged to me. With the advent of banks, we started having a central bank that is in charge of all other bank or the financial system of a country. Now, enough of the story. Now, let's get to where we actually need to get to. You will now ask me, like I mentioned, there is nothing new. Anything new is a developed version of something that actually existed or has been existing before, right? So now that we've moved into the digital space, how is cryptocurrency being produced? How is cryptocurrency being minted? That is the question we want to answer in this particular session. But before we talk about how cryptocurrencies are being minted, we need to understand the system that backs this cryptocurrency, which is the blockchain system. We'll be talking about the blockchain system, and we're not going to talk too much about it, but we're going to talk about something that I need to understand, right? Now, the central bank is the central financial institution that is in charge of the financial affairs of a country, right? That issues us the money, that prints the money and brings money into circulation. Now, you agree with me that even in the central bank, there has to be a ledger or a documentation of how this money or monies are being issued and printed, right? Now, that is what the blockchain does. Crypto mining is the process of printing crypto. The blockchain is the ledger that documents every transaction involved in the cryptocurrency space. Now, if you think of your ledger as a document that keeps every information or transactional information of the system. And if you remember from our previous class, where we discussed and were made to understand that blockchain is coined from the word of a series of blocks that are connected together like a sort of chain, right? Now, let's go back to our traditional financial system. There are people that work in the central bank and they are paid for their work. They are paid to print money, they are paid to issue money, they are paid to secure and to track each transaction that is going on in a country's financial system. Same way we have validators in the crypto space that actually needs to be paid for the job they do. And what is the job of these validators? They are the one that actually validates transactions on the crypto space. Just see them like they monitor. They monitor this thing. And for each thing they do, for each work they do, which actually is way beyond the way I'm pitching it, because it requires a large volume or a large amount of computational process and computational processors. You understand? So they are being rewarded with some amount of cryptocurrency. We said a blockchain is a distributed database or ledger shared among a computer network's node. They are best known for their crucial role in cryptocurrency for maintaining a secure and decentralized record of transactions. But they are limited to cryptocurrency uses. Blockchains, but they are not limited to cryptocurrency uses. Blockchains can be used to make data in an industry immutable. We've talked about this before. I wouldn't want to talk about the blockchain anymore. So, but I just want to make you understand how the transactional process works. So, following a specific example, let's just zoom in on this. What's it called? Let's just zoom in on this image here. Let's zoom in right here. Okay, at this place. So a new transaction is entered in the Bitcoin blockchain, and if it follows, it said a transaction is transmitted to a network of peer-to-peer computers scattered across the world. Remember, I said the blockchain technology is always scattered, and that is why even to hack it, you have to stop every computer across the world, right? So this network of computers then solve equations to confirm the validity of the transaction. Now, for each transaction you do on the blockchain, that's why sometimes it takes a little while for it to be, to be confirmed, because there are some level of security that has to go through. Not like these validators actually see, or these miners actually see your transaction, but they only get like a quiz for them to solve. And once they solve it, that is why it is called the proof of work system. They prove that they are working. And once they solve that equation, the transaction you are trying to do comes to them as in form of an equation. And once they solve it through some computer database system, once they are able to solve it, it makes that transaction go through, because it has to be validated. Just like in our traditional financial system, where which each transaction has to be validated, has to be signed, and the likes and the likes. So now, then from there, the transaction is complete. These blocks are then chained together. Now, there's a block of your own transaction, which is this one here, and there's another block of the equation that was solved after, to an equation that was solved to validate your transaction. This is an equation solved before your transaction. So all of them are connected together, and that is why we call it a blockchain. Creating a long history of all transactions that are permanent and it can't be reversed. Now, once confirmed to be legitimate transaction, they are clustered together as what? As a block or into block. Now you see, that's why it is called block. Not just because it is what, it's just because it is all together. And mind you, all of these validators are not just at a place, they can be at different places. So now I've said transaction follow a specific process depending on the blockchain they are taking place. For an example, on Bitcoin blockchain, if you initiate a transaction using your cryptocurrency wallet, the application that provides an interference for the blockchain, that is what your wallet does. It starts a sequence of events in Bitcoin. Your transaction is sent to a memory pool where it is stored and queued until a miner picks it up. Once it is entered into a block and the block fills it up, the transaction, it is closed and the mining begins. We are actually concerned about mining in this particular class we are. So every node in the network proposes its own block, and in this way, they all choose different transactions. Each works on their own block. So I will be skipping because we've had this session before. So now let's pick it from here. Once a block is closed, a transaction is complete. However, the block is not considered to be confirmed until 5 other blocks have been validated. The confirmation takes the network about 1 hour to complete, but now this has gone beyond. When it has gone below 1 hour, and it is now within minutes. For an example, the Ethereum network randomly chooses validators. We've discussed this. So now let's talk about the mining in real sense. Now, before we talk about this mining, let's look at this picture right here, right? So this is your own transaction. This was an equation solved before your transaction, which is attached to your transaction, and this is another equation solved by a validator attached to your transaction to validate your transaction in the actual sense. Now, for each equation solved right here, this validator that solved this equation, that is represented by a block which my cursor is on the moment, gets a reward in Bitcoin, and that is why it is called mining. They actually work to get it. Now, crypto mining is the process of creating individual blocks added to the blockchain by solving complex mathematical problems. The purpose of mining is to verify cryptocurrency transaction and show proof of work. Adding this information to a block on the blockchain, which acts as a ledger for mining transactions. This process uses a node run on a device with extremely high processing power. Remember, I mentioned that, called a mining rig or a Bitcoin mining hub. As an incentive, miners receive a reward in cryptocurrency for each block added to the chain. This reward is how new coins are generated and get into circulation. Now, let me put it to you. Some people mine as much as 1 Bitcoin, but at this moment, that is not actually realistic anymore. But as far back as 2011, I'm going to show you a video, which is one of the reasons why I want you to stay till the end of this class, because I'm going to show you a video where a miner actually discusses and shows how he is able to mine, how he actually mine Bitcoin, as far back as 2011. That guy actually mined 1 Bitcoin per day. Only God know how much is going to worth right now. So a blockchain consists of programs called scripts that conduct the task you usually would in a database, entering and accessing information and saving and storing it somewhere. A blockchain is distributed, which means multiple copies are saved on many machines and they must all match for it to be valid. I'm sending you 5 BTC, it must be valid on my system. It must be valid on your system. It must be valid on everybody's on that blockchain system for it to be confirmed. And that is why this blockchain can't be hacked. The blockchain collects transaction information, enters into a 4 megabyte file called a block. Once it is full, certain information is run through an encryption algorithm, which creates a hexadecimal number called the block header hash. This hash is then entered into the following block header and encrypted with other information in that block header, creating a chain of blocks. The process of mining is very costly and requires expensive hardware and software. Remember, I said there's an opportunity for you in this particular session. That is that if you are able and you know you can afford to buy mining software, you can actually also mine Bitcoin and you'll be getting Bitcoin every day. There are multiple processes miners must follow. This includes verifying transactions, performing mathematical computation known as proof of work. And when you're solving mathematical equation, you're not solving with your hand. There's just going to be a system, that's going to be doing all of that. And other later developed systems like proof of stake and other proof methods such as proof of authority. This system uses a modified version of the original blockchain, such as the Ethereum blockchain. Proof of work is a form of cryptographic zero knowledge proof. You might be hearing about ZK. That's what ZK means, zero knowledge, in which one party, the prover, proves to other the verifiers that a certain amount of computational effort is what expended. These blocks are made up of one or more transactions equaling 1 megabyte per block. While miners compete at mining, the winner who successfully hacks the next block gets rewarded with a specified amount of tokens. The amount of tokens are usually small, and that is why the mining process is not something very, very easy. So now I'm going to show you this video where a miner actually explained and share his experience on how he's able or how he gets to mine Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin per day in as far back as 2011.